My name's Kristen Wooten, and I'm the owner of Freedom Wellness Center. And we house counseling services, neurofeedback services, and then my other passion is collaborating with practitioners across the city and bringing them in to teach. So, because there's so many amazing, amazing people in our city, we just have a wealth of knowledge here. So, this is the beginning of that. We've been here about a year now and still learning how to do these things, but it's been really fun to get to know so many different kinds of people. So without further ado, we will have Theresa Hasselmeyer come up. She is an RN who specializes in Lyme disease and detox and has her own journey through those things, and as most holistic people do. So she's going to teach us tonight on her specialty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I am very passionate about the subjects that I will be speaking about tonight, and I know these wonderful people. My journey from mainstream medicine to holistic practitioner was because of some traumatic suffering that I went through myself. And I tell my story a lot, so I never know when I should tell it again. I'll try to keep it brief. I was a nurse and worked in many different settings through New York and Indianapolis and Cincinnati, and really loved what I did. And I came down ill in the year 2000 with this mysterious sickness that no one could figure out. And I went for years, actually, getting worse and worse and worse. Chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and goodness, the list of diagnoses are too long. You know, irritable bowel syndrome and anxiety and depression, and no one could figure out what was wrong with me. And so I think, to try to make a long story short, when we finally got some answers 15 years in, I did find out that I had Lyme disease and that I did have mold illness, and that I was loaded with some really toxic metals. So I grew up on the west side of Cincinnati, where I was exposed to radioactive uranium from Fernald, which is a uranium enrichment plant that was leaching radioactive uranium into our community, into the air and food and water for 40 years. And the EPA knew this the whole time, but didn't tell any of us. And it turned into a massive class action lawsuit. And back then, I was healthy. I didn't care. You know, I was at college and I got my little pain and suffering check. Yeah, you know, endorsed that thing. And I didn't feel bad at all. So I'm like, this is awesome. It didn't really catch up to me until my 30s. So as I get into my talk, I'll talk a little bit more about why that is. But I can tell you that I had become hopeless, didn't feel like my body would cooperate, that my body had betrayed me. I don't know why I'm so sick and I can't get well. I felt like I had the flu every day. So much pain, so much fatigue, so much anxiety and depression. And in the end, I was poisoned, plain and simple. And so that launched me into a voracious exploration around why are other people sick and what can we do to help people get well. So first I trained in a clinic in New York, the Uprooting Lyme Clinic in the Hudson Valley, which is the epicenter of Lyme disease. And then I joined a group of mold illness physicians, the International Society of Environmentally Acquired Illness, and learned a lot about how to detect mold illness, what mold causes, and how to get people better. And then in the last 18 months, I studied with the Environmental Medicine Institute and passed their exams and was certified by them as a environmental medicine practitioner. And so that's kind of near and dear to my heart because of my own story. And tonight, what I want to share, like I said, which is something I'm very passionate about, is giving hope to people who really don't want just the typical medical, here's your diagnosis and here's the drug. They really want to know what could be underneath what I'm going through, whether it's diabetes or heart disease or something more like me, chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia. And so tonight, what I want to do is go into what some of these hidden root causes are, what we know from the science, from the research, as well as what you can do to get yourself well. I don't know if any of you follow Bobby Kennedy Jr. He's sort of somebody I really admire. He has really fought for true health, and he has been talking more and more in the news about our chronic illness epidemic that we are living in. And I have to tell you, he was the first politician type person I ever heard talk about it. And so I was sort of doing cartwheels in my living room. Yes, finally, somebody's talking about this. But we do know statistically that mental illnesses are up dramatically, not just because of politics and social media and COVID. I mean, that has something to do with it, but in general, mental illnesses are up dramatically. I know this is Kristen's forte, and she serves a lot of those people very well, helps them get well. But autoimmunity is exploding and has been. Every year we come up with new subcategories of autoimmune diseases. Mysterious inflammation. So people who have these strange symptoms that no one can figure out, who are like me, and they've been to 10 doctors, and they've been told, we can't find anything wrong with you. We just think it's all in your head. Lyme disease. Lyme disease, according to the CDC, has now reached an epidemic level of 500,000 new cases every year. And just even 5 years ago, it was 350,000. But I don't think anybody knows this. And there are many reasons why Lyme disease is exploding. It's not just because we have more ticks. It's because our immune systems are really under attack from all of the toxins in our environment. And mold illness is another one that is just exploding. And so I see a lot of people with mold illness. Mold can cause just a whole plethora of symptoms, including diabetes. And many diabetics are being treated with antifungals and making much better gains than diet alone. When you look at what some of the root causes are behind these exploding epidemics, and I mean, that list could go on and on: autism, spectrum disorders, ADD, ADHD, and you name it. You've all heard of the many people. Allergies, asthma, eczema, pediatric illnesses are absolutely exploding. I think the last statistic I heard on pediatric illness is that 50% of children now have chronic diseases. And that could include allergies, asthma, eczema, ADD, ADHD, anxiety disorders, IBS, and learning disabilities. So when we look at what some of the main root causes are that we absolutely know from the research on the government website that we as taxpayers pay for, but none of us know it's there, are the gut damaging chemicals in our food, air, and water. And so tonight I want to explore the two frameworks that typically people use to evaluate why they're ill. Most people feel it's just genetics, just bad genetics. So I want to talk about that a little bit. Genetics can play in, but we also know that genetics aren't the whole picture or even that much of the picture. And then versus environment. And you probably know what side of the coin I land on. Genetics can play a part, but we absolutely know that the environmental toxins that we are absolutely swimming in today, which we're going to go into in this talk, are playing into these diseases. So in environmental medicine, one of our favorite sayings is genetics load the gun, but environment pulls the trigger. What does this mean? This is the basic understandable definition of epigenetics. Epigenetics is the new field of science that many people in functional medicine and even some in medicine are just starting to pay attention to. And the reason is because we are learning, and the CDC even has this on their own website, that genes, just because you have a gene doesn't mean it will express itself. You can have a certain gene that won't get turned on unless it is provoked by an environmental toxin. There are genetic mutations called SNPs, SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. Some of you might be familiar with those. The one most people have heard of is the MTHFR, which when you read that, you're like, what does that mean? That sounds like a curse word, right? When I first heard MTHFR, what is that? That is a genetic SNP, a nucleotide polymorphism. In other words, it's a programming, a part of a gene that when it is turned on, it makes it more difficult for your body to detoxify from heavy metals such as lead, cadmium, arsenic, aluminum, and radioactive uranium. And so about a third of the population are walking around with that SNP. I would say probably 95% of the people who walk in my office have that SNP. And that's one of the reasons why they're struggling, because genetically, maybe they don't detoxify. So for instance, you might have someone who's exposed to a lot of lead, cadmium in cigarette smoke for many, many years, and they're fine. They just don't seem to have many troubles because they probably are genetically detoxifying those metals well. Whereas you've got someone with that MTHFR genetic SNP, they won't detoxify as well. And so that they are more vulnerable to damage of their organs from toxic metals. The HLA gene type is the SNP that has been implicated for mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are the waste products of mold. When mold gets into your body, when you're in a moldy environment and you inhale that mold, the mold will plant down in your body and will feed on whatever you eat because they are alive, and then they will poop. Basically, they will create wastes, and those wastes are called mycotoxins. Mycotoxins are very, very inflammatory, and they can cause a whole host of symptoms: fatigue, brain fog, joint pain, insomnia, sleep issues, diabetes, sludgy bile, poor detoxification, kidney disease. There's so many different things, and there again, that's where the genetics can play in, which people get which symptoms and which don't. But if someone has that genetic SNP, they might be the one person in a house with 5 other people who is developing symptoms from mold where the other 4 people are just fine. So it's very confusing to doctors. It's very confusing to families. They'll come in and they'll say, Theresa, there's just no way that there's mold in our home, because if there is, we'd all be sick. But the truth of the matter is, you can have one person who is affected while the other 3 or 4 are just fine because of these genetic SNPs. There's actually hundreds of these. And so there are people out there who know them all like the back of their hand, and you pay them a lot of money to get your testing done. I don't know them all. I'm just going over the main ones, the ones that I feel are most common. The PON1 is the SNP that is getting more and more attention because of pesticides. So those of us who have this genetic mutation, we won't detoxify pesticides well. And so I was the lady who, right before I got ill, I might add, was out in my garden spraying all my vegetables with malathion and diazinon and 7 because my uncle was a farmer in Ross, and he's like, hey, if you want to keep the cucumber beetles out of your melons so they don't just keel over, you need to spray them 3 times a week, and you need to use every single pesticide. So I did, because I was just trying to keep my garden alive. I didn't know. But with this particular SNP in my body, I wasn't able to detoxify those pesticides. And we've even seen research that mothers who are exposed to these pesticides while their baby is in utero, that baby will have its genetics damaged in utero by the pesticides. So that right out of the womb, they are having more trouble. And the pesticides are playing into diabetes and metabolic syndromes as well. I wanted to just throw up this slide that I found on the CDC's website. I'm not the biggest fan of CDC anymore, but it's interesting that supposedly the smartest doctors and scientists who work from them are acknowledging that epigenetic changes affect gene expressions. In other words, these environmental toxins that you're exposed to can turn certain genes on or off. So many of these diseases that we're being diagnosed with that are getting blamed on genetics actually can be cured, I might say, and greatly improved through epigenetics, through turning that off. Here's their example, their biggest example: smokers versus non-smokers versus former smokers. They were able to show that heavy smokers and long-term smokers, after quitting, were able to see that they were detoxifying better, and that they had increased DNA methylation at this gene. So in other words, they could see that the very genetics improved just by removing the lead and cadmium exposures from cigarette smoke. So that's just one example of how we know that removing, cleansing toxins out of your body can actually change genetics and help genetics to heal, because your body will always seek to heal genetics. And this is how we see people getting better. I wanted to go through the fact that it's not just cigarette smoke. Some of the top exposures that we are all getting sick from today are in air. And that's because anything that we inhale is going to go straight into our bloodstream through our lungs. Whereas something that we ingest, food or water, or that we put on our skin, at least there's some barrier. When we inhale a toxin, it's going to have the most impact on our health because we've inhaled it. This researcher, Professor Ami Zota, did a meta-analysis, which means a compilation of many research studies of 26 different papers. And she found that when they were studying U.S. household dust, what are we finding in the dust of the majority of U.S. household homes? When she compiled the results of those 26 papers, this is what she found. The top toxin in U.S. household dust by far are phthalates. And phthalates are a plasticizer. They're in vinyl floors. They are in artificial fabrics, those leather couches that aren't real leather. They've got phthalates woven in. And phthalates are in clothing, in, oh goodness, many forms of plastics, the harder plastics. And phthalates are even found in IV tubing and IV bags. And so we are getting the vast majority of these phthalates through our air in the dust. But you will see that phthalates they found 100,000 nanograms per gram. So a gram of dust, what would that be? Like a little pinch of salt, maybe? That's be about a gram. I'm thinking about when I do my ferments, what 1 gram looks like. So 1 gram of dust is not that much. So if you imagine if somebody does a typical dusting in their house and they're picking up 3 or 4 grams of dust, they might have a 500,000 nanograms of phthalates in that dust. And this was, like I say, averaged over 26 research papers of the dust in U.S. homes that they tested. The second highest was phenols. Phenols are plastics, basic composition of plastics. And we know from the research that plastics in every device in our home, it's not like metal or wood, where it's got this strong covalent bond where, you know, nothing's going to flake off this metal on this chair. Or if you have a piece of wood, nothing's going to flake off of that because they have a very strong covalent bond. They don't break away. But in a plastic or a phthalate or a plasticizer, they have very weak bonds. And so they are constantly little tiny fragments, molecules of that flaking off all the time and getting into the air. We can't always see it, but it's in the dust. They're finding it in the dust. So we are literally breathing in these plastics. This is flame retardants. So flame retardants were right behind plastics and what they're finding in U.S. household dust. Flame retardants, of course, are sprayed in every mattress, couches, carpets, and cars. And so we are getting a lot of flame retardants in just our houses and our cars. We're just inhaling these things. Fragrances were next on the list. And then last of all, they found PFAS, those forever chemicals. That's the PFAS, the PFAs are the chemical that DuPont and 3M use to make nonstick skillets. And again, they were dumped in the Ohio River from up in West Virginia for 40 years before anybody knew about it. So those are in our drinking water too. And those of us who cooked on nonstick, which I did for years, and who eat microwave popcorn and many of the ways we can get PFAS in our body, these are considered forever chemicals. In other words, they won't break down. So I'll get into PFAS a little bit more later, but they can cause developmental hazards, reproductive problems, cancers, lots and lots of hormone disruption when someone's hormones are off. I hear that in my office all the time. When we urine test them, guaranteed we're going to find plastics. When we urine test people in our office, we find lots and lots of plastics. Some more air quality issues, asbestos, and probably most of you have heard of that. Most people are familiar with that one. Carcinogenic. VOCs, those are volatile organic compounds. That can be from paint. It could be formaldehyde from all the particle board. It could be, because most of us have particle board type cheap furniture now, so we're getting formaldehydes and VOCs going into the air from just basic building materials, tobacco smoke. Mold is a huge one. I could talk about that for an hour in and of itself. What happens when you breathe in mold? Carbon dioxide just from living close to highways. I know I live right in an intersection in Coleraine on a busy street, and so I know I'm breathing that stuff in. Particulate matter, that is another name for air pollution. So the biggest, so car exhaust is a huge source of particulate matter, but wildfire smoke is huge too. And when we had that wildfire smoke come through Cincinnati, was that last summer? I had multiple clients who had been doing much better come in and say, I went downhill. They were highly affected by the particulate matter, which includes mercury and lead and plastics that were burned in the fire. Radon, I see a lot of people from the east side of Cincinnati, And when they come into my office and they're very ill, one of my first questions is, have you tested for radon? Because many of them never have. And they had no idea till they tested that their radon is just off the chart. And radon is radioactive gas from uranium, naturally occurring in the soil. And certain areas of the country have higher levels, and we just happen to have a decent amount of it here. So I have seen whole families of autistic children and really sick people, and typically, if they are just really, really, really ill, they've had a radon exposure and or mold, and they have the genetic SNPs that they can't detoxify it. So they have ended up with these really horrific illnesses. Some other toxins that I just want to make you guys aware of is parabens and phthalates. Personal care products and medications and shots tend to be the biggest source of parabens. Parabens are a preservative, and they are carcinogenic. We know that they are a big player in the uptick of breast cancer in women, because there's a high levels of parabens in deodorant. And when they look at where the cancers and the tumors form in breast cancer, a lot of times it's in the outer edge of the breasts, and they realize that's where women are putting their deodorant on. So they're getting aluminum and parabens there that are getting absorbed into their lymphatics and really clogging up the breasts. But the breasts are being poisoned by flame retardants as well, by bromides. Medications and shots. So there's a number of medications and shots that do have parabens in them as a preservative. Phthalates. We talked about the plastics and phthalates, but there is a lower weighted phthalate that is used to make fragrances. So artificial fragrances and perfumes, those are phthalates. So those phthalates of multiple types, whether it's from plastics or it's from fragrances, have been linked in the research to autism, and to in men, they do a measurement of fertility by measuring the distance between the anus and the testicles, and they're finding with the phthalates, with higher phthalates, that distance is getting shorter and shorter in men, and that is from phthalates. And that can impair a man's fertility. We also find those phthalates in building materials, carpet, vinyl flooring, couches, drapes, and dust. The PFAS I talked about a little bit. We find those in non-stick skillets, grease-resistant packaging. So, fast food containers where you don't want things, you don't want those pizza boxes are a big source of PFAS. Because they don't want the pizzas to stick to the box, and so there's those PFAS in the lining. So they have found a lot of PFAS in pizzas. Water-resistant clothing will have PFAS in them. Firefighting foams are huge. I meet with a lot of people from the Dayton area, and we know that there's a major Superfund site in that area. What I mean by a Superfund site is something that the EPA has listed as a major area of contamination, environmental contamination. It's on their website. You can find all of this. But since Wright Pat Air Force Base was dumping jet fuels in the Beaver Creek for decades and nobody knew about it, the jet fuels were lining the sides of the river and was causing fires. Fires would just ignite. And they had to keep calling the fire department to come. And so firemen came to my office and told me this. He's like, yeah, a lot of people are sick around here. That's because the firefighting foams that the firefighters had to use to put out the fires from the jet fuels were loaded with PFAS. So once it was discovered, the EPA did declare it as a Superfund site. There's 32 test wells along the Beaver Creek because it was so heavily contaminated. But many people from that area, I've worked with many people who went to Wright Pat University, people who just lived in that general area have had a lot of mysterious illness. And that's from those PFAS, those forever chemicals. They are what we consider in environmental medicine to be hormone disruptors extraordinaire. So when someone has fantastically disrupted hormones that are just in the toilet, in the tank, I always suspect the PFAS. We also find it in cosmetics, in microwave popcorn. One of the highest places to ingest PFAS is in fish. And that's because many of the PFAS, the runoff from them, have gotten into the water supply. So the fish are eating the algae, which are absorbing the PFAS. And so I always encourage my clients, maybe eat one fish fillet per month, but don't eat a lot of fish, because if you're eating lots of fish, you're probably getting these PFAS. And, they can absolutely affect the pancreas, and can affect any organ in the body. BPA, when you see that label, BPA free, don't be taken in by that. That's a greenwashing label, if anybody's familiar with that. Because what they did was the companies who were forced to get rid of BPA when they saw how toxic it was to hormones and to fertility, especially in men. In fact, the low T epidemic has now been proven in men under the age of 50 who have the low T issues to be from BPA, BPA in plastics. But BPA free, all that means is that they probably put BPS or BPF in there, because now we can get away with it again. That's what these companies do. When they get forced to take something out of manufacturing, they just make something else. And this is legal. And so I always tell my clients, just look for plastic free. Just get away from plastic. We know that water bottles and tap water are the two main sources of BPA. It's every research study that has looked at plastic water bottles finds BPA in 97% of the water bottles. So they're teeny weeny, you don't see it, you can't see it floating in the water, but those little nano microplastics are in the water, and these have been found in the research. So tea bags, sadly, have BPA woven in the bag, so it's better to drink your tea from, just steeping it in one of those little balls, or a little teapot. Cutting boards, plastic cutting boards. I have to say that BPA, when I urine test people in my office, is probably the number one that we find in everybody. In children, children are loaded with it. It's sad to me. The under 45 crowd has probably more than those of us who are older. But I have certainly seen my share of people that are over 50 and are very high in BPA. Cutting boards, plastic cutting boards. We're so germophobic that we use plastic, and as we're cutting our food on the plastic, we're getting little slivers of plastic in the food. So I tell people, if they test high for BPA or if they have hormone disruption of any type, I say, get a wooden cutting board. Baby bottles, sadly, these plastic baby bottles, and the women who pump their milk into these plastic little baggies, BPA in those. Cans, any type of can that you drink out of is going to have a BPA in the lining. And if it says BPA free lining, it probably just has BPS or BPF. So if someone tests very high for BPA, or I feel that the BPA is playing into their condition, whatever they're coming to see me for, I will always say, drink out of glass bottles. Let's buy glass bottles. And, these lifestyle changes can be tough on people. But when I work with them, I say, just make one change at a time. Don't try to change everything overnight. You can make any little change that you make will make a difference. This is the one that blows most people away. Thermal receipts. those receipts that you get from Kroger or Walgreens, when you touch those receipts, within 4 seconds, the BPA gets absorbed through your skin. So when someone's a cashier, I have seen cashiers who have off the chart levels of BPA in their urine. And I will always tell them, wear gloves when you got to give those receipts away. Or if you're the customer, we're in Kroger together, and my husband's holding the receipt, and he's just walking out the receipt. I'm like, put that down. don't mess up your testosterone. He laughs at me, but I tell my patients, I say, just take an envelope in your purse with you, and when the cashier hands you your receipt, just say, can you put it in there for me, please? Or if you don't want to, you're afraid to be rude and you want to take it, put it in there right away. But don't hold on to that receipt, because the longer you hold it, the more BPA you're absorbing into your skin. Children's toys. I see my grandchildren chewing on these plastic toys, and I have to be careful because I'm the mother-in-law. I have to kind of keep it zipped sometimes. But it really kind of hurts me when I see all the plastic toys that little babies are chewing on, and, plastic binkies or pacifiers. Babies have unbelievable levels of plastic exposures. Fish, again, they're finding all kinds of plastics because our oceans are becoming so loaded with plastics. There's been research done that has shown that there's so much plastic in the ocean now that things don't sink as fast as they used to. It's actually more buoyant because we've got so much plastics in the ocean. So fish are becoming loaded with these plastics. And then, of course, like I talked about, air. Air is the top way that we're taking BPA in because it's flaking into the air and we're just inhaling it right into our bloodstream. The mercury. So I want to talk about toxic metals. Toxic metals would include arsenic, lead, cadmium, aluminum, tin, nickel, thallium. There's so many, and I don't want to completely overwhelm you, but mercury is considered the most ubiquitous metal that most of us have been exposed to because of the dental amalgams. So these silver fillings, I think I had 12 of them put in my mouth when I was a child. When I had my mystery illness and no one could figure out what was wrong with me, and they told me I was just psychiatric, Dr. Jim Smith, right here in Westchester, I think he's retired now, but he was the first person who tested me and found I was very high in mercury and very high in lead. And my son, who had ADHD very badly, I brought him in to be tested. I'm like, I wonder if that passed to him. And sure enough, his mercury and lead were higher than mine. And he never had the mercury amalgams in his mouth. We know that these things can pass down 4 generations. So the scientific research shows if you have, for every even just 1 mercury amalgam in your mouth, you are at risk of autoimmunity and chronic illness, but for sure two or more, your risk goes even higher for autoimmunity and chronic illness. But as you can imagine, it's especially if you have the MTHFR genetic mutation. You will retain mercury and lead. When Dr. Jim did mercury chelation on me, at first he gave me IVs. I'm telling you, every IV I took, I felt a little better. And this was after years of nothing ever helping me. And I'm like, within 3 months of doing those, my body came fully back to life from what I was told was chronic fatigue syndrome. I couldn't believe it. The problem was he didn't pick up on the mold or the Lyme disease. So I wasn't able to retain those gains. I did go back down. But I was stronger. I was better after the mold and the lead were taken out of my body. There's so many places you can get lead. Cigarette smoke is a big one. Gun ranges, wine. Wine is a big source of lead. And I can't tell you how many people have come into my office and said, yeah, my dad used to make his own bullets down in the basement. And so the lead can go airborne. Or how many people said, I played with the little mercury balls, you know, when the mercury thermometers broke. And the CDC actually has a statement that if anyone breaks a thermometer, that you're really supposed to call. You're supposed to call the county that you live in to come clean that up, and you're supposed to evacuate until that's fully cleaned. Did any of us know that back in the day? Oh my gosh, no. So apparently the mercury can linger in the home for years from a broken thermometer or a broken old clock or a broken light bulb that had mercury in it. Yeah.
We had dinner.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
My face broke out. She
Okay.
said, oh, well, you're allergic.
Uh-huh.
It took like 3 or 4 days for it.
Okay.
It's in red wine.
Yes. And those wines are notoriously high in mycotoxins too, because of the fungi that are growing in our grapes. And so you could have reacted to those as well. You could have reacted to the pesticide or the fungicide in a non-organic wine. So there's a lot of different things in wines that people can react to. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
Just on the wine subject.
Yeah.
Is it safer to drink the European wine?
I would love to say yes to that question, but actually the imported wines are found to have higher lead than the American wines. Yep. But the American wines will have much higher pesticide and fungicide in it.
Don't drink.
So going for organic is best. If a person has no problem with detoxification, they can drink it and have no problem, right? But if you got sick like me, if you got very sick, or if you have an autoimmune disease of any type, yeah, the wines might not be your best friend. As far as the pesticides, I wanted to go over glyphosate is the main ingredient in Roundup. That is the other one that we find in every single person we test, and I've tested hundreds of people at this point. Children are off the chart in these pesticides and herbicides. Most people have some level, I would say 90% have the glyphosate. Atrazine and 2,4-D, the atrazine is mostly sprayed in the Midwest. So Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, we spray a lot of atrazine here. And atrazine has gotten a lot of attention for their research that it, when they gave it to frogs, the frogs grew both sets of genitalia, female and male. And so atrazine can really, really, really affect hormones. 2,4-D was the active ingredient in Agent Orange over in Vietnam. And they noticed when they were spraying it, boy, does that kill weeds well. So once the war was over, they repurposed Agent Orange, and they added 2,4-D to Roundup because Roundup stopped working as well, and they wanted it to work better, so they added 2,4-D to it. Organophosphate pesticides, those are sprayed. That's the #1 pesticide sprayed in our food. And pretty much any time you go out to a restaurant, you're going to get glyphosate, atrazine, 2,4-D, and organophosphate pesticides. And these things are very, very, very damaging to your internal organs, to your liver, to your bile ducts, to your kidneys, and to your pancreas. Other sources of getting these pesticides, non-organic foods, water. Water is a big source. I'll go through what kind of filtration that I think we all need. Golf courses. Sorry. People who live on a golf course have much higher exposures to these sprays. And then if you live near farms, I can't tell you how many people I have seen who have come in and said, I live out in the country. I live by farms. And the research has absolutely proven, again, this is all on the atsdr.gov website. We know it. We've paid people to figure this stuff out for us. That if you live within a third of a mile of a farm, your pesticides in your urine is never going to come down, even if you're eating all organic food and filtering your water, because you're inhaling it. So I went through some of the top chemicals that are causing some of our modern day illnesses, autoimmunity, and diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, metabolic syndromes. But processed foods are a whole nother category here, because there's many ingredients in processed foods that keep it shelf stable for a very long time, or emulsify it. Things like, if you see guar gum, xanthan gum, or gellan gum in your food, try to find something without those. They are very, very damaging to your gut, and 80% of your immune system's in your gut. So if you've got autoimmunity and your immune system is not what it should be, people, again, I try not to overwhelm people when they come to see me. I'll say, let's just take out one thing at a time. Because if I tell you to do all of this, you'll walk out of here completely overwhelmed. So I say, don't try to change everything overnight. Start with whatever you eat every day, not something you eat once a month. What do you eat every single day that has maybe pesticides in it because it's non-organic, or it's got these gums in it? And then just try to replace that one thing. Maybe next month you replace one more thing that you eat every single day. Take it slow. Don't feel like you've got to change everything all at once. I didn't realize this till recently, but I guess the two top cigarette companies in the United States bought out the two top food companies in the United States in the 1980s. It was the biggest merger that had ever occurred in business. And so the scientists that had created all the addictive chemicals to make cigarettes more addictive were then moved into the food industry to make foods more addictive. And so people will say, I'm addicted to Oreos, or I'm addicted to Doritos, or whatever. It's because the chemical additives that are in those foods were created to be addictive, so that that's why we have so many children who are picky eaters who won't eat anything but chicken nuggets and mac and cheese, because the addictive chemicals in those foods cause those children to crave that food, and not children, adults too. It damages the gut lining, setting us up for autoimmune diseases, metabolic syndromes, which includes high A1C, high blood pressure, and inability to lose weight. These food additives can also kill off good bacteria, which I'm going to talk about in another slide, and can create a lot of immune system reactions. So another thing I go over when people work with me is, how can we change your food out little by little, just little by little? Nothing dramatic, nothing that's going to make you crazy and stress you out even more. But how can we change and get real food back into your diet? I was a child of the 60s and 70s, and so I think we ate a lot more real food than kids do today, because we didn't have as much fake food. We didn't have as much processed fake food with all of these addictive chemicals in it. And that's why childhood illnesses are just escalating. It's the chemicals, but it's also the food. So in environmental medicine, we know that it's not do you have these toxic chemicals in your body, but how many? So you've got some people down at this end of the spectrum who don't really have that many. Maybe all I have is just a little bit of anxiety, or all I have is just a little bit of IBS, or a little bit of eczema. No big deal. It's not bothering me. I can totally live with it. It's my normal. And then you've got people all the way over here, like many of the people I see in my office with these chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, debilitating illnesses, Lyme disease, mold illness. When someone's toxin bucket had got that full, it's very, very hard for them to beat some of these infectious diseases. So let's talk about the. Do you like that picture? Is that kind of a bit of a creepy picture or what there? It's kind of what's happening in our generation. We're sort of swimming in a toxic stew of chemicals. The people get a little hopeless. They're like, Theresa, we're screwed. Like, what are we going to do? I'm going to give you guys tools, I promise. I'm not here just to scare you and freak you out. But these basic chemicals that we're taking into our lungs, our skin, through eating our food, our water, they sort of jam up the internet between our cells. So our cells talk to each other and help each other to work better. And when you've got something like mold or metals or plastics or pesticides sort of sitting in between all those cells, kind of jamming up the internet, the messages won't get through. And it can cause a lot of chronic inflammation. These things can turn on genetic mutations. They can cause DNA damage. And the thing I wanted to talk about in this slide is how they kill good bacteria. So I use this little illustration in my office all the time. I say, how the rainforest down in South America, if you don't bother the animals down there and the plants, everything lives in perfect harmony. There's just no trouble. You've got rats and snakes and bugs down there, but they're not causing anybody any trouble. But you go in there and you start leveling trees and you start spraying pesticides, and so then you start losing some of your top predators, your cheetahs, your panthers, your lions. Suddenly, those rats and those snakes that weren't bothering anybody before, now they're overpopulating. Well, the same thing is happening in the human body. If you want to research this yourself, it's easy to find. From 2007 through 2014, a group of scientists and infectious disease doctors got together globally, and they researched the microbiome. In other words, the composition of bugs in the human body. And what they found was that we are 10 bugs to 1 human cell. And so for our one set of DNA that we have, there's 10 sets of either bacterial, fungal, or viral DNA right alongside. And they all lived in perfect peace and harmony for many years, until we as humans started killing off some of the good bacteria. So some of the good bacteria would include lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. And so what is killing those things? We know antibiotics kill those good bacteria, but we also know pesticides, atrazine, 2,4-D, Roundup, organophosphate pesticides. They kill off the good bacteria. And toxic metals can kill off the good bacteria. Even the plastics can kill off the good bacteria. And when you kill off that good bacteria, then you have things like Clostridia, like C. diff. Maybe you guys have heard of C. diff in people. This species of Clostridia that you can't get rid of, no matter how many antibiotics you throw at it. Yeast, Aspergillus, strep. How many people have heard of whole families coming down with strep? Over and over and over. We're seeing these people in our office, and they're getting better with the herbs, but they're not responding to the antibiotics anymore because these bugs mutate. When they don't have the cheetahs, the panthers, when they don't have the good bacteria to keep them in check, they overpopulate and they mutate. So they become more inflammatory, more infectious. We can't kill them. And people are children. I had a child, a family, a mom who brought her child to me, a 9-year-old, with a condition called PANDAS, pediatric autoimmune, neuropsychiatric. You guys probably see these kids, attributable to strep. And I put him on one of my strep formulas. I got a call from her, or actually she came in my office 2 days later and she's like, I can't believe I'm saying this to you, Theresa, but after 5 years of him having out of control behaviors, obstinate defiant syndrome, he is just, he's like a normal kid. Like, you just gave us our child back. And that was the power of herbal medicine, which I'll get to. But these bugs, they are not responding to antibiotics anymore, and they are overgrowing as a result of the things killing off the good bacteria. So many people have heard of Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr virus, herpes family viruses, mycoplasma, Bartonella, protozoan parasites. We're seeing explosions in growth of all of these things. And they are creating autoimmune diseases. They are creating bizarre neuropathies and bizarre pain and bizarre seizure disorders, etc. And they need to be dealt with. So I'm going to finally get to the good news. After I've been vomiting out all this bad news, I got to give you guys a little hope, right? So the road to the next level health. This is why you came here tonight. What is the next level to health? I promise we're going to get there. Includes, it's a long road. It's not a quick pill or a quick fix. It is lifestyle changes that you make little by little. And people who will walk this road, they'll do the detoxification, they'll change their food, not overnight, little by little by little. And as coaches, and we have a nurse practitioner working with us now too, we help guide people back to that place, little by little, and do the testing to help guide some of that. What are the keys? The 2 major keys to success for turning around things like metabolic syndrome. And I've seen A1Cs go way down with detoxification and microbiome balancing. And so the 2 keys to success are the detoxification of tissues. So all your tissues, your organs, all your cells, everything in your body, doing a deep level cleansing of that, more than just a juice cleanse or a quick, supplement package that you buy, and then making corrections to your microbiome. Am I okay on time? How am I doing? Do I need to speed up? Oh, okay. So I have a little bit of time left. I can really talk, so you got to stop me if I go a little too much. So when it comes to detoxification, this is what our cells look like in our body. We don't even realize that we have got, just overflowing amounts of trash in there. What do I mean by that? Those parabens, those pesticides, those phthalates, those nanoplastics, the PFAS. Like I say, when we urine test people, you won't believe. I'll show you in just a little bit an example of one of the tests that I did on somebody. People get blown away when they see what's in their body. But we can't just get in there. I wish we could just forklift it all out. Like, that would be awesome. But when it comes to the human body, you have to literally get in there and pull out little by little. And you got to slowly, slowly, slowly empty all those trash cans. Because rats and snakes, like in the rainforest, they love garbage cans. And so when you got those bugs living in there, they are just going to feast and they are going to multiply out of control. And it's really, really tough to get on top of the bugs that can cause part of the problem, the inflammation, if all that trash is sitting there. So one of the things I really encourage people to do are saunas and ion cleanse foot baths and binders, which we'll get to some of that. I went over these bugs a little bit earlier, but it just sort of bears repeating. These are the things that make people, when people go from, I just have a little bit of a symptom, to crazy sick, debilitated sick, almost always one or multiple of these things have overgrown in their body. Clostridia, chronic diarrhea, strep. I've seen strep cause a ton of anxiety and a ton of gas and bloating, stomach pain, because strep will line the gut. It's not always strep throat, especially children. MRSA, most of us have heard of MRSA. Yeast, Candida, Aspergillus, Cryptococcus. The World Health Organization put out a paper to the medical group that I'm in about 3 years ago, and they were warning all of us that these resistant fungal organisms are not responding to the drugs anymore. And so, sorry, y'all. And they didn't really give a solution for it, but they said the top 3 root causes of that were overuse of steroids, overuse of antibiotics, pesticides, which I was like, they're really admitting to this? Awesome. And global warming. And so I find a vast majority of people in my practice to have these fungal overgrowths, whether it's yeast, Candida, or Aspergillus or Cryptococcus, but there's more than that, and we can test for these too. Epstein-Barr virus, herpes, COVID. Why are people, some people having these long COVID situations where they just can't beat COVID? We're learning more and more as the research comes out, but the PFAS are a big part of that, the people who have high levels of PFAS in their body. And what I have seen personally in my practice is the people who couldn't detoxify mold. They were just loaded with mold and mycotoxins. They just can't beat COVID. I mean, COVID takes them down harder than most people. Lyme, the technical name for that is Borrelia, and co-infections and parasites. All of these things can cause some really significant sickness in people. So now to the good part. What can you do to take your health to the next level and the people you love? Basically, clean air, clean food, clean water. So it's really quite that simple. If you still have good health, I'm not sick, Theresa. I'm just here to learn how to be healthier. Great. I love that. I love it when people come to me and say, I just want to be proactive with my health. I'm not sick. I just want to have better health. I have them, in environmental medicine, we do consider that anyone living in the United States really does need a freestanding air filter. And we do, everyone who works in environmental medicine recommends the Austin Air, the Austin Air Health Mate Plus, or the Austin Air Bedroom Unit. IQ Air makes a good one too. Clean food. What do I mean by that? Oh boy, that is a big, big topic. What I mean is real food. If it's on the outer edges of the grocery store, it's probably something real. If it's on the inside, if it's in a cardboard or a plastic package, it's probably processed. If it has a label on it, it's mostly fake food. It was created in a factory somewhere using those seed oils and artificial ingredients. So the more you can switch out packaged, labeled foods with whole foods, things from the produce section, meats, and brown rice, beans, lentils, things that haven't been processed in a plant somewhere, that is just so key for good health. I'll give a little tiny plug, if I may, for my son and my daughter-in-law, Elizabeth and Joey Hasselmeyer. They have a fantastic podcast called the Homegrown Podcast. And gosh, they have hundreds of thousands of listeners. They went to #2 on Apple, so I'm bragging, sorry. But they do a great job talking about food. And I learned a lot from Joey and Elizabeth too. So, I mean, I learned a lot in my functional medicine training, but they interview some fantastic people, and you learn so much listening to them if you're a podcast listener. But find the podcast of your choice. There's plenty of people out there talking about real food right now. Clean water. Oh, and I also recommend organic food. So this is a big sticking point with people. Theresa, that is too much money for my budget. And I say, you know what? That's okay. Just not every single food that you eat, but what do you eat the most of? Is it meat? Is it eggs? What is it? Try to change that out for organic, because meats actually have concentrated level of pesticides because those cows were eating Roundup sprayed corn. And so that gets concentrated in their meat. So when you eat their meat of non-organic cows, you're going to get a big dose of these pesticides. So organic, so that's what org. Real plus organic. Clean water, I recommend. In environmental medicine, we love the Pure Effects filter. I don't sell it. I don't make any money, no kickbacks. I recommend it because we do consider that the best filter for, that's a tap. So it'll have this little tiny nozzle on it to, you can get water straight from the tap. But if the $800 water filter is not in your budget for this year, I tell people start with the Zero water pitcher. That one is the best pitcher on the market, better than Brita or Pure. And you just have to make sure you're changing that filter every month. So detox. So, stop the toxins from coming in, but then what about what you already have? How do we get them out? Ion Cleanse Detox Foot Bath by AMD. In your gift bags tonight, I put a, let's see what I do with it. Anyway, there's a little card in there that says free Ion Cleanse Detox Foot Bath. So it's a $50 value. If you want to come into our office, we do those. They, what it is it's a safe medical current coming into a bath of water that has salt in it. So the combination of that electricity and the salt creates ions. And the ions will go through your body and neutralize the charges on the pesticides, on the lead, on the cadmium, on the mycotoxins, and help your body drop it out. Now, people will say it's a scam, and I used to tell people it was a scam too, because, Dr. Google says now that people claim that that's all your toxins pouring into the water, and that's why the water changes colors. And I tell people, no, it's not. That's not your toxins pouring in the water. We know that the toxins are coming out in your urine and bowel movements over the next 3 days. Because if there's no feet in the water at all, the water is still going to turn funky colors. That's not your toxins coming in the water. Although it's kind of fun to watch. But I have seen, goodness, without exception, most every person in my practice who comes to me for just allergies will have a drastic reduction in their allergies if they'll do 30 or 40 of those foot baths. I mean, just doing 4 or 5 won't do much. Some people feel better with just 4 or 5, but most people, I do encourage them, if they're serious about their health, buy your own. I don't sell them. Go to Ion Cleanse by AMD, buy your own, and do them in your house. Do them at home. Work them in, stack it into your routine. If you know you sit down every day for a favorite TV program, I'm on my computer this time every day, or I have a quiet time in the morning with my coffee. Whatever it is that you do, put your foot bath under your water or under your feet at that time, so you don't have to think about it. So it's just a part of your routine. And I'm telling you, those people who do that will come into my office within 3 to 6 months and just be amazed. And they have permanent gains because they are getting the stored load of mercury and lead and aluminum and tin, whatever they got. We all have a different soup, but they're getting it out of their body. Any sauna, a sauna, far infrared saunas I like. I have an ozone sauna in my office. I tell people, do you go to the gym? Go to the sauna in the gym. And people who are just, they don't go to the gym, they have no, their budget is very low. I'm like, put a towel by your bathroom door, shut the door, and run a space heater in there. And you get hot till you sweat. It can be that cheap and easy. And just sweat, because you will sweat out. In the research, we know every single toxin will sweat out except the PFAS. They will not sweat out. So you do need the binders for the PFAS. Binders are pills, to answer your question, Barbara. They're little capsules. In fact, I'm gonna do a drawing, do a giveaway for the biotoxin binder. There's many different binders on the market. I like Cellcore. I've been working with binders for 7 years now, 8 years, and I haven't found one that works as fast and as efficiently and safely as that one. There's activated charcoal on the market. There's zeolites on the market. There are chlorella is another binder. Bentonite clay, thank you. GI Detox. But there's a number of binders that you can use. They are slower, they take longer, and they can tend to have more detox reactions. What that means is when they bind to that mercury or that lead, and they move it, but they don't have enough energy to get it fully out to the gut, they might drop it somewhere else. So my preference as an environmental medicine practitioner is to use the Cellcore binders. I don't own any stock in the company. I just like their binders because I've seen for children, phenomenal. My sickest of adults, most of them can handle the binders. Depends on the binder. These binders go well with food. In fact, they'll, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they are really nice. They go and they actually help deliver the nutrition of the food. So the food, most other binders, you have to take an hour and a half away from food, otherwise they'll interfere, and they'll actually steal the minerals out of your food. The Cellcore binders will not steal your minerals. I do love that line, and I do find it to be very safe and very effective. They did put a warning label on the back. It's a California Prop 65 legal requirement. And so I get calls now and again from people saying, "Hey, what is this? Is there lead in this?" And I assure them that there are organic and non-organic versions of these metals. Anything in the Cellcore line comes from a plant. It has been metabolized by the plant. It's organic. It's safe. I've used them for years. I do before and after urine testing. The lead always comes down in people. Never does it go up. I've never seen it go up. So I have a lot of confidence in the product. I've never seen anybody get sicker taking it. So it was like this legal thing that they had to put on there. It's not because the product is a dangerous product filled with lead. So anyway, I just want to put that out there. But there's many different binders on the market. That just happens to be my favorite one. So if you want to take your health to the next level, filter your air, filter your water, clean food, and if you want to work on what you've accumulated already, one or all three of these can be fantastic for just cleansing the tissues in your body. And I can tell you that these were a key part to my recovery as well. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm Joe. I'm a patient. I'm doing the Cellcore binder. Got a bad case of Lyme disease. But what I want to tell you about the binders is, yeah, Cellcore work great. Keep in mind that the dosage is not the average. We're all different. And our enemy is invisible. The other thing is we don't live in a stagnant environment. It's dynamic. Every day we've got different inputs and outputs.
Mhm.
And the point is, you gotta get tuned into your body. The normal senses, you gotta get tuned into your body because, like in my case, I have a heck of I take the amount of binders recommended, I get real sick. So I have to back off. It's what you call it. You get rid of all the die off and it recirculates and it makes you sicker. When that happens,
Mhm.
don't stop. Now, I've also found with that said, especially the liver. So it's okay to back off
Yeah,
for a couple days,
Mhm.
but don't quit, don't give up. Just understand if it says 2 tablets, you might have to take one every other day
Mhm.
until you get acclimated and start feeling better and then great.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. I wanted to show you guys an example of the urine panels that we offer if you ever wanted to be tested yourself. So this first one is, I have a 37-year-old male here. He came to me with extreme levels of anxiety and depression and psychiatric illness. We did find that he had Lyme and mold. But I don't know if you can see this. This is a summary of look at this: mold, 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 mold. And then below that, we've got beryllium, thallium, DDT, which was banned in 1979. But we're still seeing traces because it's such a persistent chemical. Plastics, plastics, forever chemical, forever chemical. That's just the first page. Look at all those. What's that? This is the Vibrant Wellness Tox Bundle. And by looking at this, I was able to say, hey, I really want you to test your home for mold. Look at all these molds. And he did, and he had so much mold in his home. And he moved out, and he realized he was feeling a lot better, and had better mental health just by moving out of the moldy house. I've had women who have come to me with very high levels of that DDT and Roundup in their body. Their gut is wrecked. They had terrible, terrible ulcerative colitis, IBS, terrible gut disease. And so we had to really go through with a fine-tooth comb and see where it's coming from. But they get better. They get better. When we get that out of their body, and then we can deal with any bugs that overgrew, any rats or any snakes that got out of control, they can get a lot better. This is a 16-year-old girl who saw my pediatric practitioner, Jen Losi. She had PANS and PANDAS and terrible, terrible POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, mold, 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 bismuth, mercury, uranium, atrazine, BPA, and this is a solvent. This is that is styrene. And in her moderate category, she had thorium, which is a radioactive metal, uranium and thorium, and tungsten. So, I mean, everybody's just a little bit different, but I think it can really, really help when someone has, it's like, it really is just kind of what I live for. I kind of ferret this out with people and help them see, this is what's poisoning you, and so that you can get well. And yes, urine is provoked urine panel. So in other words, we do a foot bath to try to pull out a hiding, because it's hiding, right? It's hiding in the fat, it's hiding in the endocrine glands. We pull it out of hiding and push it through the kidneys so that we can see it at all. Because if you just did a random urine, you wouldn't see it. It would look like it wasn't there. I'll try to finish up for you guys so I don't drag this on and on and on. These are some formulas that we make in our office. These liposomal essential oil formulas. It's a unique herbal mixture that we make up. I write the formulas, and it's based on the research of Johns Hopkins and multiple peer-reviewed papers just showing that essential oils beat superbugs better than the top antibiotics. And so when we spin these safe organic essential oils into liposomes, little fat bubbles, and they get delivered very deeply and very safely into the body. So it's been such a blessing. I call them God's medicine because I feel like God gave them to us. I try to treat them with a lot of respect. And they have helped so many people with Lyme disease, parasite overgrowth, yeast and fungal overgrowth. I've seen it help with strep for sure, MRSA, C. diff, colitis, ulcerative colitis, mold illness. So this is something that we do offer. You know, when you put basic safe things like oregano, garlic, clove, thyme, and cinnamon into a formula, you know, bugs will change their genetics when they see an antibiotic or an antifungal that was made in a manufacturing plant somewhere, and they'll resist. But when it sees something from nature that has 30 different compounds in it, like oregano oil, it'll never resist that. So you won't get any resistance, and they're intelligent. They won't kill off the good bacteria.
Are all those ingredients combined?
Yeah. Well, I custom write them for people when they come work with me. And then we sell a few that are standard formulas. I do like an antiviral formula that's been really helpful to people during cold and flu season. A strep formula we're now selling, and a tick bite formula. And I have a really nice one for people with chronic nausea and vomiting too that works really well. These are our practitioners. Our newest team member up there on the left, that's Jamie Rui. That's our nurse practitioner. So we now have someone who can write prescriptions and give diagnostic codes and order labs that the rest of us weren't able to order. And then that's myself. Jen Losi is our certified pediatric nurse, put in her 25 years down at Children's Hospital, and now is really loving working with kiddos. And then Lisa is also pediatric nurse, and she is in Denver right now getting a certification in nutrition. So she loves food and is all about food. So thank you for listening. I know I can talk a lot, but this is something that I'm super passionate about, and I'm open for questions if anybody has a question. Yes. Yeah, migraines and headaches I have found to be almost always from infectious illness, from these bugs that overgrow. Yep. And when we can get on top of those bugs, and of course I always emphasize the detox, they make pretty dramatic improvements. So they have to be willing to do it for months. You know, it can't be a quick 2-week. And the formulas taste pretty awful. Don't they?
It's not that big.
So
You can smell it. I'm still like me to kiss her.
yeah.
What's the
Right. That's for the bugs. That's how we get the bugs in check. We get those rats and those snakes back down, and the ion cleanse detox foot bath that I described, saunas, and those binders. No, just teaching you how to change your foods. Yeah. Uh-huh. Correct. Yep, they're coming out. The research shows that in the bell curve, the first 12 hours, we're seeing the vast majority of toxins come out. And then for the next 3 days, we're seeing less and less and less and less coming out. I threw a number out there. When people who are trying to get rid of allergies, chronic allergies, they have to generally do at least that many. Well, I've had people do 12 and, still get a decent. Yeah. Some people will come into our office once a week for 12 weeks. That's typical, and sort of try it out, make sure that this is working for me. A lot of people will do that. And then when they see that they're making progress and their allergies are improving and their A1C is coming down, and their blood pressure is improving and their thyroid numbers are improving and their cholesterol is improving, and they see their labs shifting, they generally buy their own. And then which I don't mind, and then they just do them at home. I celebrate that. I'm like, heck yeah, get at it, girl. Get your own and do them 5 days a week, because you're going to really move those plastics and those pesticides and those metals out. Yes. And sweating. I have not seen the proof on the PFAS. I haven't seen the laboratory evidence yet, but I have seen the studies on the binders getting the PFAS out. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Okay. Oh, that's how it happens to these people. Oh, really? Um, I, it, I know. It hurts me. I've seen multiple people with Lou Gehrig's, ALS, MS, some pretty nasty stuff, who are living in those areas. Yep. Springfield, Ohio, there's some nasty mass contaminations up there too. I mean, every city's got it. If you go to the EPA.gov website, all you have to do is type in any zip code. Guaranteed you'll find one of those Superfund sites. It's sad. People have no idea what they've been exposed to. When I sit down for our initial consultation in the 90 minutes, I'll say, tell me where you've lived. Tell me where you've worked. What have your exposures been? Unbelievable. People don't know what they've been exposed to. And when we start looking at, oh, you grew up in the Fort Worth area, massive PFAS contamination. I mean, lawsuits over it. And I mean, this particular young woman is like 30 years old. She's been sick her whole life, and she's getting better. It's been awesome. It's been exciting. But she was loaded with PFAS, and she couldn't detoxify mold because her toxin bucket was so full. Her hormones were so disrupted by PFAS, she just couldn't detoxify mold.
Are there anyone in the
None of us special, or like an endocrinologist. Is that what you mean? Or
like you specialize in
uh-huh. Yeah. Yep. Nayla Goldberg is an endocrinologist. Of course, she would specialize, and she does functional medicine. Uh-huh. Nayla Goldberg. Yeah. Don't know.
That's, but like, so if I came in and
Uh-huh.
stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that, with that information, you guys be able to work together?
Oh, sure. She sends people to me because if she wants their toxic burden analyzed so that we can more precisely look at what they need to detoxify from, she'll send them to me. Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on the person's goal. If someone's just trying to be proactive, they've got good health, I'll say once a week. That's how I got rid of my mother's 25 years of arthritis. Oh, the Ion Cleanse by AMD? A different one. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Oh no. Pull it out of the closet.
We're using the Chi machine and we're using
Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Pull that out of the closet. Yeah, pull it out. Yeah. Any other questions?
Have people remove
Not right in the beginning because it's just overwhelming to that poor person. Yeah, yeah, it can. It can cause some complications. And so I'll usually say, let's get you stronger first. Let's build you up. Let's change some easier, cheaper things first. And then when you're ready, get those done. And for some people, they don't do it for years and they still make progress. Yes, I do. Mindy Moonowitz here in town. Is Mindy 60? Is she 65? Wow. Michael Westendorf and Dan Cobb are some other ones. The Ruther, yeah, Dr. Channon is referred, because I was Dr. Channon's patient, and he referred all of us to him, and I went to him. He's supposedly holistic too. Did he quit too? Oh, Michael did? Oh, that's sad. So it's just Dan Cobb left. He's in Dayton. And then there's a holistic biological dentist in Columbus named John Johnson. So some people who want to get their root canals extracted and then get rid of some of that stuff, they'll go up and see him. There was a great guy in Indianapolis, Ted Reese, and he passed away. I was so sad. Yeah, the root canals, because it's a dead tooth, infection can get trapped in there and it will just continually irritate the immune system. So, they can either put an implant in its place, or they can just put a bridge or a partial.
It's more costly for maybe mini one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I also don't recommend mouthwash or toothpaste that kills germs because you're also reducing your nitric oxide, which the good bacteria in your mouth, because you'll kill the good bacteria too. I'm not familiar with Essence. I'm not familiar. Is it a probiotic mouthwash or does it kill stuff? Okay. Oh, I'm not familiar with it. I don't even generally like essential oils in the mouth. If they're in liposomes, yes, but not just straight. My preference is just good old baking soda, coconut oil, and bentonite clay. Make your own and don't use mouthwash. Okay. Yeah.
But now that you say that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we think twice now.
Yeah. I've had people who have used those essential oil toothpaste and then they get herpes outbreaks in their mouth because when you're killing off the good bacteria, then herpes viruses can just. I like the dirt. It's just stay away from xylitol. That will kill off good bacteria. I encourage my clients to use good old coconut oil, baking soda, and bentonite clay. There's recipes. There's all kinds of recipes out there. I literally just use baking soda. That's me. Cheap, easy, great. Deodorant. Schmidt's does a fairly decent brand you can get on Amazon. I use Toups & Co. Thanks to Joey and Elizabeth Hasselmeyer. Toups & Co. Toups. It works very well. It's a nice deodorant. It works really well. I don't think it's... I don't remember. It's a tallow. I think it's a tallow-based deodorant. So it's just really good for skin, and I'd have to look into that further if there's any. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Roundup was patented as an antibiotic before it was patented as a weed killer. Stevia, many people can handle stevia, I think, but you have to watch your packaging because sometimes it says stevia, but when you look at the back of the package, it's all maltodextrin, and it's like a greenwashing. You got to be careful of greenwashing. I mean, the labels are deceptive sometimes just to sell the product. I believe it does, and of course it's an obesogen, and it's carcinogenics, and it's addictive. So yeah, yeah. All right.
I was just going to make a comment on mold. So I've been fighting SIRS, mold, Lyme for 10 years now. But I was working with Dr. Heyman, my toxins specialist. This message was, you're not going to get better if you don't get rid of it. Go brand, no water damage, definitely no. We had a finished basement and carpet down. I tell you, is minimize your carpet, hygroscopic, and it'll attract the moisture. So I'm not getting that. Carpet's 20 years old. So floor camper, ripped out all the carpet, put down vinyl flooring, which fit the brand. There's a European vinyl flooring that doesn't have all the algae. Right. So anyhow, the reason I bring it up is we also cleaned out our storage. It was packed in cardboard boxes. So when we moved, when we hit boxes, messed with it. They sat there for years. And I'm going through it, and her and I are going through the boxes, and it's smelling musty. Well, we never noticed it. Well, mildew and musty smell, get the hell out. SIRS, because it's the mycotoxins. It's the die-off. When you smell the mildew smell, I'll rate my mom. That's the poison that you smell. Okay? And when I pulled up the edge of the carpet, where I had all the boxes on the shelves and what have you, because the air wasn't circulating through there, my carpet was wet. So we went through everything, got rid of all the boxes. Costco bought a boatload of those plastics we have, and we got desiccant tanks. And the air quality in our basement was incredible. So much. Getting rid of the cardboard boxes, getting rid of the clutter, carpet. letting the air. And so just recently, I mean, I still have a long way to go, but just recently, we're like, still not making the progress that I. So we had an antique dining room set. Our dining room. So just for shits and giggles, went to the back of this old 100-year-old server that we had. I took some soapy water. So black, I had to throw the wash right. I wiped it down 3 times. It looked clean that first time. And so we got rid of that. We got rid of the dining room table. Cleared that front room out. I felt a little better. And along the same lines, we had a little shit poodle, and he got sick. We just had to put him down. But that's another story. But he was losing all his hair, and it was making me sick. So 2 years ago, we had to get rid of the dog. Our daughter's still a little better, but he had always sat on our couch. So we made a decision, got rid of the couch. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Got rid of the dining room table, server, and the couch. I'm becoming more stable. So I have to think there's something to it. Again, our enemy is invisible. Like when we were kids, you know it's there. You can't see it. So it's just guessing something. I just want to throw that out there. Just little.
Yeah, I love it. That's what everybody says. Yeah, yeah. Are we done with time? Should we do our drawing now? Is there a bag with the names? And we got 3 prizes here. I have a deluxe tick bite kit. So this, if you're out and you get a tick bite or any type of bug bite, this little device will help suck the venom up out of it. And then we've got a special little device. This is the best device possible for pulling a tick off of you so you don't break the head off. This looks like a little fork. And we've got an essential oil that you would place on it as soon as you pull that tick off. A little Ziploc bag with instructions of what to do. And so this normally sells for $35. And people love it. And oh yeah, well, there's a few. Yeah, I've got a few. Gosh, should I draw or should? Okay, so it looks like
Aaron Newman.
that's you. There you go. Take that camping with you. And then there's another tick bite kit. Melissa Steckel. Here you go. And then this is the Cellcore biotoxin binder. And then this will go to Kim Murphy. There you go. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. And the Foundation's Wellness brochure is in the bag. If you or anybody that you know would like to just have some deeper analysis of root causes of illness and a holistic strategy to get well, or testing. So thank you. Thank you, Kristen, for hosting.